everybody. Thank you so much for having us, Jeff. I did wear purple in honor of your new venture. So my name is Lisa Nielsen, and I am here today. I am known in social media as the Innovative Educator, or on Twitter, I'm at Innovative EDU. I'm the author of a book called Teaching Generation Text, and I also am the head of technology innovation for Manhattan Schools. The name of our panel today is Are Teachers Keeping Students Prisoners of the Past? And I want to make clear from the beginning that there are educators like me who don't want to keep students prisoners of the past, but because of outdated policies and guidelines, I am forced to do that. So it's quite frustrating to head innovation for a large borough and have my hands tied. So that's sort of why I'm bringing this panel together here today. Now, the policy in the district where I work would have prevented me from meeting these wonderful students who are with us today, because we have a policy that basically says that educators and students shouldn't really communicate online. In fact, the chancellor of our school system said that he prefers that educators and students don't interact online. However, I don't follow that policy actually, and I happen to be friends and a follower of thousands of students. And what's interesting is that we might share a neighborhood with each other and not even know that we share the same interests. In fact, Zach Malamud, who you heard earlier today, lives right in the town with Jeff Pulver. But he found out about this conference because of social media, because of the group that he shared earlier, the Student Union, which was a group started by Doris Fetak. But also, I started that group in collaboration with her. And the point there is the point that we want for all educators. Our job is to support students, share with them resources, and ensure that we can help them amplify their voices and bring them to places like this. So I have 4 wonderful students who are here today who will be discussing this topic. And I'd like each of them to give a brief introduction of themselves and explain why this topic is of interest to them. So we'll start with the first person to my left, Nikhil Goyal.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Nikhil Goyal. I'm a 17-year-old high school student at Sept High School. I'm the upcoming author of the book One Size Does Not Fit All, a student's assessment of school, to be published in September. And I'm really interested in this topic because I think there's a huge conversation that can be erupting with technology and how we can really bring in different types of social medias and tools into the classroom to really engage different types of students.
Hi, my name is Lucia Grigoli. I just graduated from Newton North High School outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm going to American University in the fall of 2013, and I'm involved in the National Student Voice movement and also have done work in my community in creating a social media policy for my school.
Hi, my name is Allison Wu. I also just graduated from high school in Massachusetts. I work to give students a voice in education reform and young people a voice overall in policy making. I'm really interested in technology because technology was what allowed me to connect with others who are interested in the same things and then empower an even larger group of students to speak up. I think that there are some schools that are doing great things with technology, but a lot of them, it's just not enough.
I'm Matthew Resnick. I'm a senior at Eleanor Roosevelt High School here in Manhattan. I use technology to learn and connect in and out of the classroom, and I'm an education reform activist and advocate for the student voice.
So you might have noticed that there's a almost blank screen behind us. And what that is we would really like this to be interactive. Now, we have a few hundred people here today live, and there are several thousand people who are watching this via live stream. And if you have comments, thoughts, or questions that you would like the panel to address, we'll be looking at those at the end. And we'd like you to use the hashtag StuTech, which you can sort of see up there, but STUTECH, and with a pound in front of that. And you can also use pound 140 EDU as well. Throughout this panel, some of the students will be monitoring that, and we will bring both the voices of those who are here in person and those who are watching us via the internet into the conversation as well. So the format that we're going to do today will follow this format. The problems that result when we restrict students from using technology, some of the logic, the flawed logic of doing so, solutions to overcome these obstacles, and then the questions and comments from the audience, which will be also projected here behind us. So we are here in New York City today, and some people who are not from New York City or who are not educators in New York City might not know, but students are banned from using any of their own technology for learning in schools. They can't use their own laptop, their own iPad, their cell phone, or any of those devices whatsoever. Now, the reasons for this were cited over time from the mayor and the chancellor, and it's a reason that these devices are banned in many districts throughout the United States and beyond. They are, one, that student-owned devices are a distraction, two, that they are a cheating tool, and three, that they are a device used for pornography. So the first thing I'd like to do is have the students respond to their feelings about the policymakers and administrators who are banning these tools and resources like websites and whatnot. What is your feeling about this and their thoughts behind it? Like, how would you react to that when those are the reasons that are given to you? So who would like to start with that?
I will,
Okay,
I guess.
Great.
I think that a lot of the reason that teachers and administrators are not using technology to its fullest potential is because they're actually scared of its uses, and they don't fully understand the benefits and exactly how it works. So one of the biggest issues is that administrators especially, and I guess teachers too, are afraid that students will cheat or, access inappropriate content through the internet, or just waste time. And all of those can just be addressed, I guess, with the question of integrity. If your student is someone who's trustworthy, someone who's not going to tweet, sorry, I don't know why I was looking at Twitter, sorry guys. Someone who's going to cheat is going to cheat, whether they have technology or not. And if you have technology, it's not going to increase the amount of cheating that goes on in your classroom. It's just a different type of cheating. So I think it's important that administrators and teachers understand that the benefits really outweigh the risks of using technology.
So it sounds to me like you're saying that the administrators and policymakers are not dealing with the issue, and they're making it about a tool rather than an issue. And I know that, Matthew, you had some thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, I think that the policymakers and administrators are really overlooking a great opportunity to help students build trust with teachers and administrators and explore what works and what doesn't work for them in learning. And I think that if students are given the opportunity to explore these different methods, that they'll really improve their whole educational experience. And in my personal experience, I came to my teachers 2 years ago with an iPad, and I said, hey, I'd like to use this in the classroom to take notes and do homework on it, and is that okay? And of course, since I was the first student in my school to do that, they were kind of wondering if it was going to work or if I was going to be distracted. But over the period of a couple months, I really built trust with the teachers, and I learned how to use it effectively. And from that, more students have been encouraged to use technology in the classroom to take notes or do homework on, and it's really turned into a big collaboration between students and teachers to make the most of it.
And so a lot of what I'm hearing from you, which I think is so important, and which is why I think educators need to be partners with students, is because we need students to possibly lead the way in this. I know Lucia is going to be sharing a little bit more detail about how she's doing that, and other students here are doing that as well. But our school systems need your voices to help educate the adults in the system about effective ways to use technology and resources for learning. Nikhil or Allison, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can. I think in my experience, I agree with Lucia. Teachers are scared. I had experience with one teacher. I was saying how we should be putting Twitter and Facebook into classrooms, and what he responded to me is that I don't want to be replaced by a computer screen. And he's pretty old. He's not that a modern teacher in the sense that he's at the cutting edge of technology. So he didn't have any idea what he was doing. And so I think there's a huge reluctance to go into technology because we're scared that they're going to use it inappropriately, they're not going to use it to the best ability. And I think that's absolutely wrong. We should be leveraging it to the best of our ability. I use social media almost every day, and it has changed my life. And I think it could change other people's lives in the sense that you could publish your work on the internet. And it's not, the problem is that educators think that Twitter and Facebook are just a frill. It's just another thing that you just post stuff about your daily life. But it can be an amazing tool to put news, put your updates, and if we use it in a very intellectual way, you can really leverage it to great extents.
So I think also a part of what Nikhil is touching upon is the fact that educators, administrators, and policymakers are making these decisions and policies, and they're not involved in these worlds. I had a similar experience to you. I talked to a group of technology directors, and it was interesting because I did think that because it was technology directors, some would be familiar with Twitter, and I had an activity similar to this behind us where they would be sending in tweets, but nobody was tweeting in the group of technology directors. And afterwards, I was one of them, and I started speaking, and he said, look, I don't get this Twitter thing, so it's banned in my district. And we can't have that be how we make these policies. In the place where I work, the people who make the policies are the lawyers. There are not educators that are involved in the policy making, nor are there students. And that is something I think is really important that we work on changing. Did you want to add anything to this particular question, Allison?
I just really think that if you don't embrace technology, it's already an integral part of our lives, and if you can't learn in school how to use technology, how are you supposed to do that when you're out in the workplace or anywhere else?
And that's such a good point, because we hear often adults complaining about those kids with that technology, but when we're not working in school and talking about responsible and appropriate use inside of school, then how are we really preparing them for the world outside of school? Now, I'd just like to take a moment or put you on alert for the students who are monitoring the Twitter stream. Are there any questions or comments that you want to bring out right now before we go to the next question?
I guess just one of them,
Okay.
which actually just has to go off what Nikhil and I were talking about, and it's about how technology can be seen to threaten teachers. The question was, does that threaten some teachers that there's technology in schools? And I think that that's just another component. The fear is that, what's my role in the system?
So I think that is an absolutely valid fear. And we've had some really interesting conversations via social media about this. And the fact is that technology does change the role of the teacher. And these are conversations that we must be having in schools and with teachers. We can't keep it out so it stays the same. Do any of the other panelists have thoughts about that?
Yeah, just briefly, I think the role of the teacher is going to change in the classroom. It's no longer the person with the fountain of knowledge. They're becoming a person that's, one teacher told me, the architect of opportunity. So they're going to be facilitating discussions. They're more as a guide on the side, and they're not leading the way. The students are. So I think no teachers should not be replaced by a computer screen at all. It shouldn't be happening, because I think there's that huge benefit of having a teacher right there with you physically in that classroom, and I think there's points to take from that. So we can't just let computer screens take over what the role of the teacher is in the classroom.
And I think that the computer screens can do some of the more monotonous work that might have been done by teachers in the past, like some basic assessment stuff, the delivery sometimes of some learning objects, but this gives the teachers more time to have that face time intimately with the students who need it most, and I think we should really think about that. Another role I'm thinking, or another way it changes the role, is that teachers and students need to work more in partnership. And I'm going to give a real-life recent example with myself and one of the panelists, I got a brand new phone, and I started using it, but really I just handed it to her, Allison, and I'm like, can you just show me how to use this thing? And she showed me everything within just a couple minutes, and then I did something today and she thought that was really cool, and I'm like, yeah, you taught me that. And I think that teachers have to not be afraid for really classrooms. Teachers are anyone in the classroom, not just the adult in the classroom. And I think that is another one of the changing roles of teachers. And we can almost think of it as teachers are experts in pedagogy and guidance, and sometimes students are experts in those technology tools, and we should really leverage that to help us help them learn in the best way possible. Allison, you look like you had something to say.
I think that one of the concerns I've heard is that if you're looking at your computer screen all the time, you're missing out on that key interaction between teachers and students. But instead, I really think technology can help facilitate that rather than replace that. And I think it's really important to figure out how to integrate it so that it makes the entire classroom and learning experience better.
Okay, anyone else want to add before we go? Yep.
Just to give another example of students working with teachers, as I mentioned before, it's turned into a really big collaboration in my school, and when the teachers saw how I was using technology to improve my education, we actually came together. It was me and a bunch of teachers and the technology director in my school and the principal, and since we're very lucky to have a lot of technology in our school that we can use, they came to me and said, well, what are you using that works, and how can we use that and spread that to the other students and into the classrooms? And since then, technology has really grown in the classroom, and it's really improved things, and it's shown the teachers and students the possibilities.
So that kind of leads to our next question, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that and back to what I was saying before about students really leading the way. I'm going to bring this one to you, Lucia. Lucia and many students and adults are using social media as learning tools, and in many districts and schools, those tools are banned. Lucia has a personal story about this and how she helped change policy in her district. And really what we're talking about is some solutions and some success stories of how, when student voice is used, we can help affect change in action. So if you could share that story.
So my school is pretty good with technology. We have all these brand new equipment to use, but the one thing that's blocked on the school server is Facebook. Twitter's not blocked, YouTube's not blocked, it's just Twitter. It's just Facebook. And so I do a lot of my work through Facebook. I talk to my peers about group projects because that's really the way to communicate between people effectively nowadays. And I also do stuff, with Lisa and get involved in the student voice movement through Facebook. I also have a lot of extracurricular activities that I'm really passionate about, so I don't have very much time. So most of my schoolwork, my homework, everything, I do during my free blocks in school. But I couldn't access Facebook, which was extremely detrimental to my learning. I definitely think it hurt my grades, and it made me stay up late a lot of nights when I really could have just been sleeping and well rested for the next school day. So that was my personal experience. I'm on the board of the policy board for my school. So I decided this was an issue and I wanted to bring it up. So I introduced a bill to unblock Facebook and create a social media curriculum in the school to help teach kids not only how to use especially social media, effectively to just expand their learning. And it passed successfully. We're currently working on the logistics of it. But I really think that was a step in the right direction for my school. And I think almost every single teacher on the policy board was very much against it when I started introducing it. And by the end, only one teacher voted against it. And I thought that was just an amazing just view of how students can change the ideas of teachers.
I think it's so powerful because the schools that I'm watching and writing about that are successful in doing this are bringing students in as partners. Lucia's school is bringing her in as a partner to write a social media curriculum. That's powerful. Blake Copeland is another student that I engage with at times, and he developed the app development program at his school. So I think that really acknowledging that our students are the leaders in many areas and allowing them to be a part of the decisions and even lead these decisions, or as was said earlier, be organizers of this work is incredibly important. Before I move to the next question, does anyone want to add anything to what we were just talking about? Okay, so I'm going to move to the next question, and our student panelists will also be looking at the Twitter stream to see if there's any other questions we want to pull out. So the next thing I want to talk about, because I want to give kind of real examples and bring this to life, is how has the banning of technology tools or resources affected your learning? Now, Lucia touched on that quite a bit, but I know that a few of you have your own stories of how either that has negatively influenced you or what you wouldn't be able to do if you did not have access to your own student-owned devices or social media and other things that are blocked in schools, like blogs or YouTube or things like that. So who would like to take that, Nikhil?
Yeah, I think it's been really detrimental, but I've made sure that I've gone away from that ban in the sense that I use my iPhone during class when I need to, because I think I'm learning more through Twitter than I learned in class, and that's a huge problem, I think, because in school, we need to really bridge that gap, because I was looking at just one example of a school district. So in the literature class, the teacher basically told their students that, imagine you were Shakespeare and you were living in that time, and tweet out some things. You just read the section from this play, and now tweet out some things if you were Shakespeare. And it was a really good project for these kids. They loved it. They were tweeting, and they really enjoyed the experience as a whole. And that's just one simple example, but I think if we use these technologies, because they're so easy to use in the sense that social media to kids is like breathing. It's just natural. This is how we were born. I think it was Mark Prensky who said we're digital natives. We were born with this technology, and we know how to leverage it in different ways. And one more thing, I was at the Columbia Social Media Conference in January, and they had people called social media doctors. So they're guiding people and people who haven't used social media in different ways, and that's really how we should be thinking of teachers, social media doctors, helping these kids as they get older. It could really happen at very young ages, but you have to make sure that it's regulated and put to a level that helps kids understand what you're doing.
Matt, did you want to share something on that?
Yeah. Now, fortunately, in my school, they've been open to technology and social media policies, and I've had a more positive experience than a lot of people have. And technology has definitely helped me in my education and other students. And not to brag, but my school has definitely been rated one of the top schools in the city. And I can't say that's just due to technology, can't say it's just due to one thing, but it's because the teachers are open to exploring different methods for learning, and the administration is open to hearing from students and hearing from teachers and letting them explore what works and giving them the resources that they need. And technology has allowed me to access a lot of resources in and out of school, and it's really made things more unique in the learning experience than a lot of people would have without the technology available.
Did you want to add something, Allison?
I've had some really great teachers in my, so far, 13 years of schooling, and it's just really too bad that some of their great teaching can't be shared more, and I credit them with a lot of my success, and I just think that using social media as a tool to share the great things that they're teaching means that they can teach an entire global community of learners. And that's something that really, like, every child deserves to hear some of the things that my teachers are teaching me. So I think it'd be great to embrace social media in that way.
Okay, and before we move to our last question, are there any Twitter stream questions or comments you'd like to bring to our attention? You have one?
Yeah,
Okay.
someone tweeted before, Heather Rocco, that are we more engaged or less engaged? And they pointed out that if you look around in the room, everybody's on a device. And I think it's important to stress that technology can't be a replacement, just as Nikhil touched on before and a lot of people have touched on. I think it needs to be used as a tool, and we need to embrace it to improve education and improve communication, but it definitely shouldn't replace any other methods, because a lot of us probably wouldn't be here today if we couldn't connect using social media and other platforms online. That's how I got my voice out there. That's how all of us are getting our voice out there, and it brings us to events like this where we can embrace both technology and communication.
And I think that's such a great point, because as an educator, people say to me, we can't have technology, it's a distraction. Yet in the schools I work in, where we are embracing technology and ensuring that students have access, the teachers say that they've never seen their students more excited and engaged than they are. And what we need to focus on is training teachers to harness that excitement and engagement rather than push it to the side. Because when we do, we will have students that are engaged not only with those people that are randomly placed in the room because of the geography that they happen to share and the date of birth they happen to share, but people who share those passions and interests from around the world when we open it up with social media and allow that engagement to happen. And I know you want to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I talked to Chris Lehman, and he was saying how technology needs to be like oxygen, invisible, ubiquitous, and really spontaneous, and that's really how we need to be using it.
That's a great point. Where I work, many websites are blocked, and we just had a Twitter chat about this, that the principal can unblock a site. It's not a problem. Well, by the time you're teaching a lesson, you get approval from the principal. It takes a couple days to unblock. Like, that teachable moment happened 48 hours ago, and it's gone. And we need to empower teachers and students to have access to those learning tools. So I'm going to go to our last question, which is the solutions. Do you have thoughts about the right way that we should do this? And we've touched on this a little bit, but if there are other final thoughts about that, and then we'll end with questions from the audience. Are there any? Yeah.
Well, I actually just saw a tweet that actually said everything I really wanted to get across, which is just being young, a social media expert, it doesn't make you a social media expert. And that's actually interesting, because I'm actually decently terrible with technology, even though I'm here and I have this phone. But I think that's why I wanted to introduce the curriculum into my school, is because it, the students that know how to use social media effectively can help the teachers, and the teachers that know how to use it effectively can collaborate with the students, and then the students and teachers that don't know how to use it can learn from that collaboration, and that's just amazing. That's just sharing of ideas, and that's really what we need to do, I think.
Allison?
Adding on to what Lucia said, I think it's kind of a cycle. If you empower students to speak up about what they want in their education, a lot of them, I'm sure, will say technology integration, and once you get some more technology integration, they'll be able to use that platform to advocate for more and across the nation, just not only in their own schools, and then it just becomes a cycle.
Okay, so we are coming to the end of our talk, but we have another minute and a half to take any live audience questions. So if someone has a burning question that they want to, okay, over here.
If schools get in the way of your education, have you ever thought about staying home or being homeschoolers?
Okay, so the question is, if school is getting in the way of your education, have you ever contemplated learning outside of school, leaving school, opting out, home education? And I personally know at least one person on this panel thought about it pretty deeply, because I also run a home education opt-out do-it-yourself learning group, and Nikhil jumped on that group, and he was wondering for his last year of school that school really was getting in the way of his education, and he wanted to get some ideas. So why don't you share your answer to that?
Yeah, I think because I just came across, I've always been a really good student, I've been really in tune with school, and I got good grades, I did all my homework, I followed all the directions and all the rules, and then it really hit me probably 2 years ago that something was really messed up. So I posted on that group, and what I'm eventually going to be doing is that I'm just going to go for 6 months. I'm taking 4 classes, so I'll be there for 3 hours, so it's not too bad. And then I'll be going on my book tour, and that's not, I'd love to do that. That's much more better than school.
Right, and I think that's, oh, we got an extra minute. Okay, great. So I think that's really an important point, though, that we need to be very aware if school is getting in the way of learning. And I think it's wonderful that we had this opportunity on social media for Nikhil to speak to hundreds of parents whose children had opted out from school, as well as adults who had opted out from school, to get the perspective from people who had actually done that and help inform his decision. And then Matt wanted to add something, and then you looked like you wanted to, Lucia.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely good to keep options open for whatever type of education you think will work best for you. But I think what's essential is that students who are not satisfied with the education they're getting need to stand up and don't just leave and just take your own way to do it and do whatever you got to do. It's you got to stand up, and you have to make the opportunities available for other students who aren't exactly aware of what their options are, and you have to make the change that you want to see in schools.
Love it. And Lucia, what did you want to say?
I just wanted to say that I think the benefits, I gained a lot from school, but I didn't gain it during, we went to school from 7:50 to 2:30, and that's not when I learned. When I learned was I was on this policy board I was talking about. When I learned, I was captain of my track team, and I was on the mock trial team, and that's where I was able to discover it. So I discover my passions and what I really cared about. So I think that as long as schools just integrate those extracurriculars into the everyday life, I didn't like that middle of the school day part, and that made me kind of dislike school. And I feel like if there was
So
an
basically,
option,
if we had less requirements and more choice
yeah.
for students in owning and guiding their learning, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And Allison, do you want to leave us with, oh, actually, we got one more minute.
We got
so.
more time.
That's exciting. Do you want to share your thoughts, and then we still have a minute?
I think that it's great that people have options to opt out of school. I have friends who are homeschooled and they loved it, and I liked my school experience. And one thing that I always felt was, someone asked me last week if I had ever thought of doing homeschooling, and I do think there are flaws in the system, and I thought that the best way to change it was to stay within the system and change it from within, rather than opting out just for myself. So I've always thought of that, but I think that there are some really great things out there that schools are doing, that teachers are doing. I'm very appreciative of the education I've gotten, and I'm looking forward to education improving across the nation.
Any final thoughts from our panel? All right, so thank you very much for listening. I hope that you will continue to listen to these students. All of their Twitter handles are in the program, and we appreciate you listening to us. Thank you very much.